Look what I did to this city with a few drums of gas and a couple of bullets. Everyone loses their minds.
Hey y'all, a very late Happy New Year's to everyone. Firstly, let me say a much overdue thank you for the reception and feedback to my first attempt at a long-form video and Escape for the People. It really meant the world, and I've definitely taken some stuff into account since upgraded the setups and hope to come back strong for you guys that really feel what I'm talking about here. Very rarely do I feel so compelled to write that I can crank out a video in less than a day. It's how the last video started, and it's how this one came together too. I am working on the next Gas Appeal, a lengthy video for the very incredible Arc Raiders, so please do look forward to that. I did, however, want to talk about, if only briefly, the latest subject of controversy in the gaming space, the premiere closer at the prestigious 2025 Game Awards, Highguard. As the one last thing at any big gaming event, it goes without saying an insurmountable amount of pressure exists at this spotlight. If you're not Kingdom Hearts 4, Elder Scrolls 6, or the next Hideo Kojima IP, what the f are you even doing here?
You know, sometimes our last reveal at the Game Awards is a teaser for something years and years away. Not tonight. Our final world premiere comes from 61 members of the team that built Apex Legends and Titanfall.
What did I say?
What
did I say? Star Wars for the 3P, baby. It's Jedi 3.
PS triple. The PS triple. I ain't talking about that.
Highguard.
Oh. No. Everybody heard him say former Apex, right? Wow.
Highguard.
What the f is he talking about?
This is what most of the gaming community was asking Jeff Keighley not even a day after the event about Highguard, a seemingly inoffensive but hardly groundbreaking hero shooter that revolved around raiding and horseback gunplay. On the surface, it hardly seemed worth the vitriol, especially at a decently satisfying Game Awards where Star Wars, KOTOR, and classic Mega Man make their long-awaited returns. What is it then about Highguard that triggers the gaming community so, and why is it that so many smell blood in the water? On this channel, it's sort of been a core theme to discuss the long-term impact of live service games on the industry, and whether it's an established industry giant like EA or PlayStation Studios or smaller-scale independent devs like Highguard creators Wildlight Entertainment, if certain expectations aren't met, the reception can almost be universally predictable. Overwhelmingly negative reviews within the first hour of release, hate brigading content creators, a seemingly endless loop of negativity in the online space for the game. The economy of hyperbole demands a sacrifice. In this case, the expectation is nearly impossible to meet as people made their minds up the moment Highguard was in Kingdom Hearts 4 or whatever game you'd most have rather seen at the end of the TGAs. Even more so disturbingly, these same bad faith actors seemingly won't rest until the developers concede defeat and wipe the game from the collective hard drive of society. To better understand the full picture of it all, it's important to rewind the clock a few years back to 2022, when former PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan announced the company's expectation to deliver up to 12 live service titles by 2025 in a broader commitment to meet the demands of a rapidly growing industry. Of the 12 projected titles, only 4 would make it to production, with only one proving to be a legitimate success story and another conversely serving as the biggest train wreck in gaming history. The remaining 2 yet to be released, Bungie's Marathon and Haven Studios' Fair Games, most certainly aim to recapture the lightning in a bottle struck by the fantastic Helldivers 2, but absolutely nobody wants to become or emulate or even be remotely compared to the biggest live service bomb, Concord. I didn't play Concord in any capacity, neither did you, so I couldn't even tell you personally what was so bad about it gameplay-wise. To me, it looked like your run-of-the-mill hero shooter with a Destiny Code of Pain and a convoluted round-based PvP system. And for millions of players who on average spend maybe once, twice a year on your annual Call of Duty or franchise sports game, that first impression is generally all you need. On the surface though, it isn't hard to see everything that went so wrong so fast for the team at Firewalk Studios, who would go on to launch Concord on August 26, 2024 following a poorly received beta period, and promptly shut down servers less than 2 weeks after release on September 6. Firewalk would go on to be shuttered in October 2024 by Sony, bringing the Concord saga to a resolute but swift close. At a $40 price point in a competitive oversaturated genre, Concord was doomed from the start. Steam peaks for the short duration it was live were in the triple digits, touching a lukewarm high of 697 players its opening weekend. Even if you were among the few to genuinely enjoy Concord,
if you were, I salute you as someone who would argue that Marvel Avengers was ahead of its time, but that's a video for another day.
The overwhelming negativity this early in a game's lifetime, where word of mouth is life or death, can be enough to discourage and otherwise dissolve a player base completely. I honestly can't say whether Concord the game had anything redeemable about it, but I do think it's important to acknowledge that regardless of how you feel about the game, the overall consolidation of game development teams and efforts to capitalize on a rarely successful and often contentious live service trend has been largely a net negative for the industry and disastrous for the developers themselves that often don't have much say in the direction of these games to begin with. The story of Concord here is genuinely shameful from top to bottom, but I think the worst of it comes straight from the publisher, PlayStation, and the criticism more often levied at the developers doesn't seem to account for this enough. In the same vein that Skate Period is absolutely not for the people by way of Electronic Arts, the great PlayStation mandate for 12 live service smash successes resulted in hundreds of millions of dollars spent, jobs gone, and people who probably loved video game development a little more jaded and less passionate about their living. Highguard released this week to a divisive audience, bemoaning it for a number of criticisms, some definitely valid, some less than. At just under 100k Steam downloads for a Monday launch, players were seemingly open to whatever kind of game Highguard turned out to be, even if the developers may have left much of that up to the player interpretation and not concrete marketing. Following the unimaginable success of Apex Legends dropping out the blue in 2019, I imagine the former developers involved with that moment sought to recreate it in their independent debut.
Highguard.
On paper, this is perfectly fine. Come out the gate swinging and give players a chance to experience the game and make judgments themselves. Only problem is, the landscape of gaming discourse has wildly changed since 2019, and the response to an Apex Legends received back then would certainly take a measure of more effort to achieve in 2026. Games are no longer pre-ordered like putting down $5 at GameStop, but judgments certainly are, for free. Upon its reveal at the Game Awards, the words, "From the team that made Apex Legends and Titanfall," alone evoked a specific kind of reverence that pretty much overshadowed everything else to follow. Never mind Jeff's preceding delivery regarding 61 members from the team and a new independent studio. This could only be one of two things after all. It's the Game Awards closer, so it's gotta be Respawn Entertainment, the famed studio responsible for the Star Wars Jedi games and the Titanfall franchise. Two very beloved franchises with very devoted fans eagerly awaiting follow-ups to both of these games. To be frank, all potentially legitimate issues with Highguard aside, the complete lack of foresight to this sort of reaction on Jeff Keighley's part is a little amateurish and shockingly out of touch for someone poised as the games media guy. You single-handedly dethroned E3 but can't figure out why putting Highguard as the closer to TGAs might be a bad idea? How could he, in his perhaps sincere but misguided effort to propel smaller independent developers directly onto the main stage for better or worse, have instead given the game an indelible scarlet letter? Amidst allegations of being financially tied to the game's development or involved with the team to some capacity, the story's just much simpler. Highguard was there because he liked it. Supposedly, whatever was originally to be shown suffered some delays, and Jeff, in his position as the face of the Game Awards and benevolent ally to all games developers, decided to slot Highguard right at the end, simply because he played it and he liked it and thought others would too, going as far to convince Wildlight to feature their game. On the surface, a totally innocuous decision to the benefit of these developers wound up a decidedly mortal blow to the game's reputation, solely for being the closing announcement to a Game Awards show meant to celebrate and revere this industry and its laborers. Whether it was the aesthetic, the apparent hero shooter elements, or the generally vague explanation of what a game of Highguard actually entails, immediate impressions were made. The game was in fact not Titanfall 3, despite there being zero indication there would be, and any attempt to salvage this moment was left to silence as Wildlight withdrew in the month-long wait for their game's release. "We didn't do a great job with our trailers," says Wildlight CEO Dusty Welch in a recent Bloomberg interview by Jason Schreier. As what was initially planned to be a shadow-dropped release playing to their core strengths lucked into possibly the second biggest live service rollout disaster of the past decade. So what is Highguard, after all? To quote creative director Jason McCord, at its core, Highguard is a new mode. And at the core of this new mode is a 3v3 PvP first-person shooter consisting of hybrid classic capture-the-flag arena sandbox blended with phases of search-and-destroy rounds similar to Counter-Strike or Rainbow Six Siege. Set in the titular continent of Highguard, a once-thought mythical land of limitless arcane resources, mercenaries called Wardens are sent in on contracts to secure strongholds and impede rival crews. Each match features distinct phases of gameplay, beginning with the reinforcement phase where you and your squad fortify your base and secure the perimeter around your generators. You can swap loadouts between an in-round trader, utilizing an economy system not unlike those aforementioned tactical shooters or even a MOBA like League of Legends. The Gear Up phase is next, where squads can depart their respective strongholds to explore the map, looting chests and harvesting Vesper for more trader currency. This initially plays out like something straight out of Fortnite, featuring a melee minigame prompting timely strikes for faster harvesting. You can encounter enemies at this point if they venture far past their territory or you yours, but for the most part you're meant to play around your team, looting securely before the next phase. This is where that MOBA influence comes again, as the map clearly features dedicated lanes and POIs for squads to assemble. Following a brief timer, the formation phase begins, and by now teams are expected to meet at the shield breaker, where the game is essentially capture the flag, or who can deliver the shield breaker to their enemy's base first. This can result in a prolonged and honestly fun open arena scuffle as teams employ their warden-based spells to contest the shield breaker and their mounts to traverse the lanes, which feature speed boosts. The thrill of rushing the shield breaker to the enemy base with their opposing mounts hot on tail is equally enjoyable and make this phase a particular favorite of mine. Upon successful delivery of the shield breaker, the siege phase begins as squads now contend in attacking or defending their respective objectives. The attacking team share a limited pool of lives in this phase, and the defending team, now down a tick of health, need only defend their anchor generator, but preferably all to stay in the game and stead the assault. The tight stronghold map design definitely helps the 3v3 combat shine a lot more here, though the basic reinforcement options on launch leave more to be desired. I can see Wildlight easily fleshing this out over the coming months, adding more options for utility and defense, deployable turrets, barricades, etc., but as it stands, a more underbaked element right now. A match continues as each generator destroyed ticks the stronghold health down, and successfully repelled attacks equally tick the attacker's stronghold health as well, with games continuing on in this cadence of uniquely interwoven phases, juggling MOBA, base building, and arena and tactical shooter elements in a way that, personally, actually feels as unique as the developers probably think it is. To put it more succinctly, and again quote the developers themselves, Highguard is a PvP raid shooter. I hopped on for a game on launch day and honestly expected to play a game, maybe two, and call it a day. Fortunately, that wasn't my experience, and I found myself actively unable to put down the game. Hold up, I get it now. I said to my mans, and we proceeded to run another and another and another, and we began dominating games, setting up sweeps for the anchor generator, making insane 570 comebacks, and hours after, Highguard was all I could think about. This might come across as an odd parallel, and if it misses, it misses. But to me, Highguard and the shooter genre in general right now remind me of the stagnating decline of commercial rap music predicated by headlines in 2025. Two massively popular mainstream commercial genres that used to define their respective generations have sort of fell to the side in favor of more niche, dedicated acts. The old guard can still pull numbers, but it's rare to see their face in the positive light these days. And the new kids just make you look at them like, is it the kids that are wrong? Is it me? No, it can't be. If the recent 2016 trend on social media is anything to reflect on, it's that things used to be much simpler. Something like Overwatch, which is universally understood these days, was wildly innovative and new back in 2016. Not dissimilar to when hip-hop acts were also still putting out wildly exciting projects in abundance like A Boogie's Artist or Young Thug Slime Season 3. And that's not to say that they still aren't, as you can still get a game like Arc Raiders or a Let God Sort 'Em Out or a Big X to Plug if you know. But they are getting increasingly rare in a world where everything needs to be the next big thing or delete itself from existence.
I have an equation.
Oh, this will clear it up.
In the 8 years since Mr. Stark announced himself as Iron Man, the number of known enhanced persons has grown exponentially. And during the same period, the number of potentially world-ending events has risen at a commensurate rate.
He's saying it's our fault?
I'm saying there may be a causality. Our very strength invites challenge. Challenge incites conflict. And conflict breeds catastrophe.
In the 10 years since its debut, Overwatch has spawned countless hero shooter clones, some successful, some long forgotten. As Vision says to the Avengers in Captain America Civil War, our strength invites challenge. As dedicated player bases form and communities coalesce around successful pillars in the live service space, fewer opportunities are available for new and original ideas to break out the mold. Players know what to expect by now as games are under a higher scrutiny than ever, despite fewer barriers of accessibility. Before, the caveat used to be free to play, FOMO-free battle passes, maybe we'll give your game a fair shake. Even Arc Raiders, the biggest Smash success of the past year, launched at a budget price and has 2 free battle passes into its service so far. not counting the abundance of premium currency that has been available as rewards. If you're a big fan of arc raiders like me, it wouldn't be a stretch to have only paid that $40 entry and nothing since. How insanely generous it's been in its first 2 months post-launch. But that's just also the environment that it has to contend in. Like, I don't think it would necessarily have failed if that weren't the case, but it certainly didn't hurt that we have not had to pay much of a dime past the entry to arc raiders. Highguard, conversely, launched free-to-play on a Monday, a month following its controversial debut, coincidentally during the biggest modern snowstorm from mid to northeast United States, which in and of itself enables it to see highs of 100k on day one, as most curious and homebound give it a go. The Battle Pass, or War Chest, is in fact free as well. With zero barriers of accessibility, Highguard is by all rights poised to, at very least, attain a viable audience over time as people come to discover it. So why are we making it harder? Anyway, all this to say, I'm not here writing this expecting to change the minds of the masses or get folks to try Highguard. I do encourage you to give it a try, see if you like it yourself. But I did give it a fair shake myself and came off less disappointed with it, more with the community surrounding it. How ultimately, a naive gesture of goodwill from Jeff Keighley wound up inflicting seemingly irreparable damage to a game's reputation, and the consumer watched and cheered as they burned. It'll forever be impossible to know how a Highguard would have fared in a world where it wasn't the closer at the Game Awards, and an already uphill battle for market share became actively harder as Highguard remained defined for this moment. At the end of the day, if you like it, that's cool, and if you hate it, that's cool too. But if you're someone who feels the need to hate something so much it becomes your personality of the week, then you've probably got deeper problems than a video game. I don't expect Highguard to become some sleeper hit or anything, and will probably just continue to play it on and off myself as I do most other games and enjoy it much like everything else in life while I can, because life is short and negativity shortens it further. Earlier I said the economy of hyperbole demands a sacrifice, and you thought that was a bar and stayed in the video. This week it's Highguard, next month it'll be Marathon. As someone that's played both of the previous Marathon alpha tests, I'm actually very positive about that one as well, and I can't wait to see how that shakes out too. It's certainly not too late for Perception to turn around there, and frankly, once we're past this initial hate cycle, I don't think it's too late for Highguard either. Amidst the scrutiny, it's easy to miss the developers have shared a year-long roadmap, which is a good sign of support to come. Most games barely launch with a quarter-long roadmap, let alone a year, so I actually do think the team at Wildlight are putting their all into this, and I look forward to seeing it improve. Let me sum it up by saying I don't think Highguard is by any means the next big thing, but it also doesn't need to be. It's a perfectly serviceable and honestly uniquely innovative raid shooter, as they call it, and after spending enough time with it, I totally get that and think others will too. The performance needs to be improved, and ASAP I'd add, as the otherwise visually dull landscape suffers from resolution tearing and occasional FPS stutters. Console FOV and 120 FPS is a must as well, personally. And as it turns out, just as I'm about to hit publish, Wildlight goes ahead and drops a 5v5 mode for a limited time, no doubt listening intently to their players just days after launch. While I do think a 5v5 would have came sooner or later, perhaps the devs are waiting for a new warden or two to round out the 8-character roster. All in all, a positive sign, along with an already added FOV slider and a new base to boot, of a dedicated dev team passionate about their game and eager to improve it. I do think this complaint stems specifically from the Fortnite melee mechanic with the Vesper mining, and I 100% get that. It works for me, and I kind of get why it doesn't work for others, and I could see this kind of being more involved. Though I criticize this lack of foresight at the closer placement, I can easily see why a legitimate lover of video games like Jeff Keighley endorsed it all the same, as it does harken back to that golden era of arena sandbox shooter, while at the very least trying to break the status quo. I can also totally see why people see this roster of over-designed hero characters in a game like this and instantly write it off, and frankly, that's something that the industry itself needs to reckon with in the coming decade. I don't think the hero shooter is dead by any stretch of the means, given Marvel Rivals' immense success in the past year alone, but it's clear that, like the FPS and the Battle Royale of yesterday, room for experimentation is thin, if not gone altogether. The only hero shooter I think even remotely has a chance at breaking that ceiling yet again is, unironically, the inevitable DC-based Marvel Rivals clone. And that's solely off the strength of the license. which could honestly only indicate the true rock bottom that the shooter genre ultimately finds itself in after so many years as a cornerstone foundation of gaming. As far as innovation in the shooting space, I think the real mold breaker is going to have to really dial it all the way back out of this era of hybrid shooters and affix-affix/PvP, nonsense that we're in, and really bring back the drawing board. I don't know what the answer is. It might not be Highguard. It certainly isn't Concord. Personally, the finals is kind of close to what I'm liking out of more modern shooters, and even that game has a player retention problem. So, really it's just across the board kind of stagnancy that we have to really reel back from. But overall, I could never fault the developers that keep trying to break out of the mold. And I hope they keep trying, and I hope they aren't totally and utterly discouraged in these situations like this. Let's be kinder to our developers. That's the message. Peace.
That is so.
Concord?
Gretchen, stop trying to make
Concord.
happen. It's not going to happen.